Hello, listeners. Welcome to yet another episode of Courage Talks. Special guest today is Ramanathan. He has decades of experience in the corporate life, but his strong brand identity, for which I really appreciate and admire, is he's the founder of Coacharya, which is one of the leading organizations which is doing transformational work in the field of coaching. And an MCC and an esteemed coach himself. He's full of wisdom and deep insights whenever I've had a conversation with him. And it's extremely a great privilege, sir, to have you on board. Welcome to Courage Talks.
Yeah, thanks, Italia.
So Courage Talks is all about courage, and the backstory is it's about my book Against All Odds, which is my father's biography, which I wrote. And when I was talking to my father, we was having that deep down conversation about his life. I realized there were multiple instances of courage which he displayed in normal life. He was no celebrity, but he displayed tremendous courage to be able to weather tough times. What's your view of courage? What's your story on courage?
Well, I mean, my view of courage or definition of courage is probably the same as anybody else's, that we are able to stand up for whatever your beliefs are and move forward. To me, courage doesn't mean absence of fear. Yes, of course, you're afraid. You're afraid of many things, if not for yourself, other people. But in spite of it, are you able to stand up and be counted? And unfortunately, you couldn't be there. But we had recently a conference on spiritual intelligence, and there were these three ladies who came and spoke, and they work with exploited women. And they literally had to stand up in front of mobs which wanted to kill them. And the way they described, we all got goosebumps in the audience, about 200 people. And people had tears in their eyes. They applauded, ovations, standing ovations, stuff like that. So these are some of those things where courage stands up. Courage is not absence of fear, in my opinion.
Any role model whose name comes to your mind who you think is synonymous with courage?
From a mythological perspective, not necessarily mythological, it's historical because it is Ihasa. In Mahabharata, there are these two characters, one is Duryodhana and the other is Arjuna. Duryodhana didn't know what fear was. He was a coward. And he was not courageous in that sense. He was a moron, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
Not quite the right word, but
Yeah.
Arjuna, on the other hand, was afraid. But he had to face his fear. And he had to literally, he shook Arjuna's dilemma in the Gita chapter portion of the Mahabharata. He didn't want to fight. He said, how am I going to fight and kill my kinsmen and my gurus and so on and so forth? But then he faced the fear and did that. So to me, that would be a pretty good, whether you want to call it a metaphor, a role model, or whatever, that kind of a figure. Yeah.
Wonderful. Sir, we know you are as what you are today, but we don't know much about your childhood. So why don't you take us down memory lanes? Where did you grow up? A bit about your parents? Any instances that you remember from your childhood? Would love to hear that.
Pretty simple, actually. I grew up in an environment, very Tambram, South Indian Brahmin family. Grew up with my grandparents. My parents lived in a deeper south part of Tamil Nadu now, the Tirunelveli district, partly in the village environment, later in the district of the city of town of Tirunelveli. Yeah, what I remember is, in fact, for me, in my life, the role models have been the women, my great grandmother, who practically was my spiritual inspiration. My grandmother, my mother, extraordinarily courageous woman, my sisters, and my wife now. So I found their ability to be courageous in the face of odds is far, far greater. So very quickly, I spent mostly with my grandfather. I did my engineering. And those days, you were not really asked about what you wanted to become. You were just told, yeah, you want to be an engineer, my brother, a doctor, and so on and so forth. Did that. The pivotal moment there, I guess probably risk-taking courage, whatever it was. I didn't want to continue in the city of Madras those days and earn 300 rupees a month with TVS or whoever, Simpsons, which were the direct options for any Tambram to go to. I wanted to get out of the city of Madras. So I was lucky. I think fortune favors the brave, I think, not the fools. But I got a job with a company which at the time, DCM, which was one of the highest paying companies. I went there, spent about 3 years in a place today, which is very different from what it was, Kota, industrial town, left and joined levers. At some point in time, I sort of felt, and there was a book that I read, Passages by Gail Sheehy, which sort of said that till that you are in your 20s, you are all about, ideals and stuff like that. You don't think that you are invincible. and you don't have any limits to what you can do. And suddenly at 30, you put on a little bit of punch, gray hair, and then you start looking at an expiry date. And then you start wanting to be something in your life. And that happened. And I wanted to be chairman or CEO or whatever it was. And that didn't seem to be happening when I was in Lever. So I quit Levers, took, again, a fairly courageous step, if it were, but more serendipitous. Became the CEO of a group of companies in Delhi. The Anand Group, the founder, Deep Anand, passed recently. He was a great mentor to me. And at some point in time, decided there was no point in living in India because it was corrupt. It was the chairman level salary was $10,000, and you couldn't educate your children unless you are completely you did whatever thing needed to be done, which was corrupt and so on and so forth. So decided to get out of India. As it happened, within 1 year, Manmohan Singh and Narasimha Rao changed the scene. That made things much different than what it was. But so 20 years, the next 20 years, I spent abroad. Somewhere along the line, when I was 50, suddenly I had a subconscious imagery of not wanting to work, and something probably I don't believe that's true, but there was a crisis, economic crisis, Southeast Asia. The company I was working for, Indonesia, could not really afford to pay me in dollars. They said we'll pay you in rupees, which is about 1/10 of the value.
Yeah.
So I said enough is enough. I quit. So I quit and went into a spiritual path, which didn't work out, and finally became a coach. So, in a very simplistic sense, that's the story of my life. Most of it happened not because I planned. Yes, I had some direction of what I wanted to do. That happened when I was about 60. But before that, I guess like everybody else, I sort of made my mistakes, and failures taught me,
Mm-hmm.
and moved from there.
Right. That's a great wrap up of your journey. But I would want to pick up a few instances, right? What was the first instance that you recollect where you realized that you have courage? What was that instance or moment where you had to really muster that courage to stand up against something? And maybe you could take corruption as an example, where you felt that, oh, this is not me, right? This is not something which goes aligned with what my
I think
principles.
it's more by example. I think the greatest example to me was my mother. Even in that conservative community, living in places which were very conservative, she would stand up. I mean, she would stand up for the rights of, for example, the sweeper women, people who were carrying night soil on their heads and things like that. And people wouldn't allow them into their house, and she would fight for their rights. So watching her do some of these things, I guess, made me also a bit of a maverick and also not very liked, because I would stand up for whatever I felt was an injustice. Right from childhood, I got into a lot of trouble because of that, including with my grandfather and so on, who had much more a conservative set up way of life. So I don't have a specific example when it happened. I think it was something that rubbed off on me with her, with my mother, basically, and also my grandmother. And her mother became a widow when she was about, my grandmother was about 10. Her mother, my great grandmother, was probably about 25, 30, something like that. And she was an extraordinarily courageous woman. She handled all her finances. I would go with her wherever. Spiritual leaders like the Coacharya of Kanchi, various other kinds of concerts and so on and so forth. She, in many ways, exemplified a liberated woman in one sense of the term. She wasn't going to listen to anybody. So these were things I sort of imbibed over the years. And then when I went to work, I had no fear of telling anybody. I was extremely direct. And that didn't help me. In many cases, it didn't help me. But fortunately, Hindustan Lever at that time was one of those few companies where I could get away with it, and I grew up with it. But even there, probably there was a limit. So I don't know. I mean, it was just a overall makeup. Uh,
Right.
that is how it happened.
Right. There are two aspects of corporate life which are generally considered transformative in nature, right? One is your managers or superiors with whom you work, because it gives you a chance to observe them from close quarters rather than just being a third party observer. And the second is the transitions that you make, right? When you switch a job, when you switch a role. Would you like to highlight or pick up maybe a few people from your work experience where you learned a lot from them, something very distinctive or dynamic style about those individuals which resonated really well with where you embraced those skills as well, and that kind of really impacted or created your own profile and persona the way it is today?
Okay. These days, people don't spend that much time with any one company. I spent about 18 years with Levers first, and about 4 or 5 years with Anand, and then another 10 years with another company in Indonesia. So my whole life as a corporate kind of a thing between 20 and 50 was divided between three companies. Or before that, when I started as a trainee, even though, yeah, as an engineer, I was called a technical management trainee and whatever it is. Early in life, when I went to work in DCM, the thing I was taught was I was put under a mistri, as he was called, a person who worked on pumps and compressors and all that. It was fertilizer factory. So I was basically asked to be his apprentice and start doing things. So I learned how to assemble and disassemble compressors. Anything moved, didn't move, whatever it is, I could work on it. So there was a certain amount of self-confidence that happened, which doesn't normally happen with engineers who pass out. They don't know anything to do with their hands. And not that I'm terribly good with my hands, but that was something that I learned. And in Levers, it was in many senses an extremely collaborative company. There was a very great emotional bonding between people who worked, even though we were all very competitive. Each one was trying to become the chairman of the company or the CEO of the company or whatever it is. But there was a camaraderie that was unbelievably powerful. So we were like a family that grew up over the years. One of the things I realized, whatever reason, was that there were a couple of accidents which I wasn't afraid of death. I wasn't afraid of handling dead bodies. I wasn't afraid of going and sitting by the side of somebody who had 80-degree burns and was about to die and hold their hands and be able to do that. Probably that came from my mother and my great-grandmother, but something of that sort that happened. So over a period of time, that sort of led me into something, a deeper discovery of who I am and whatever. I learned transcendental meditation, went into many other spiritual kind of things. And in a sense, once you lose the fear of death, you lose the fear of everything. There's nothing to fear. You don't fear about going and speaking in public. You don't fear about standing up to somebody and facing any situations. Okay, what's the worst that can happen? If all that is going to happen is something happens, that's okay. And I'm not worried about that. It's not just about being reborn or something. That's one part of it. But then, from a quantum principle that I become part of an energy, I'm no longer the matter, something like a Ramanathan's philosophy. So I think it was a whole lot of things which came up. So it evolved over a period of time. And then at some point in time, when I was about 50, when I stopped working in Indonesia, when the economy collapsed, I went for a Vipassana program. And that Vipassana program, in some senses, opened up my eyes to something more than what I thought I was. I spent about 7 years with someone who I realized later was a criminal and a fake. But during those years that I was there, I sort of applied myself to my spiritual growth. I wrote about 30 odd books, all that. But then when I left somewhat disillusioned and frustrated and whatever, I tried working with NGOs, which were probably just as bad as the spiritual experience or academics. Then I decided I'll go back to the corporate that I knew best, because at least they were not hypocrites. They were very pretty open about that. We want to make money. And is there something that I can do? And somebody suggested I become a coach. I didn't know what the heck a coach was. So, yeah, I said, okay, because I was told that I have to listen. And I was also told that you are not capable of listening. So I said, yeah, let me challenge myself to see if I'm a listener. Became a coach, and Coacharya happened suddenly. And my son and I said, so I started this company. So it worked out and suddenly gave me a purpose in terms of how do I serve other people while serving myself, which evolved into a concept of spiritual intelligence, which is what we are currently celebrating in Coacharya. And it seems to be working. So we'll work as long as it works. But that's really what it is, yeah.
So, a trick question, right? Do you need to have courage to become spiritual, or does spirituality boost your level of courage?
I think they won't go hand in hand, in my opinion. I'm not talking about the religious kind of this thing that
Yeah,
spirituality has
of
nothing
course.
to do with that. I think when you think of people as being equal and everybody is the same as you and you are here for a purpose to help other people, I guess what happens is that you got to shed your ego. And that, in some senses, requires a certain amount of courage. I don't know if the correct word is courage, but whatever it is. If somebody doesn't respect me or doesn't seem to respect me, that's fine too. Maybe disengagement is a better word, but to be disengaged again, you have to be courage enough to say that I'll stay out of it. It's not a technical definition of courage. Let's say, for instance, as a result, if I were to face a bullet, I wouldn't have a problem in any situation. So that is courage. So I guess in some ways, spiritual intelligence instills courage. You don't have to be courageous to become spiritually intelligent.
I think because of the pressures of daily life, and in fact, a lot of people even don't come across the word spiritual in their regular corporate life till their 30s, 40s, right? They don't even spare time for it, right?
Sure. See, yeah, absolutely right. When we held a conference now, we had some really eminent speakers, and a couple of my seniors, and everybody had some difficulty in terms of, they used to ask me, I mean, what the hell do you mean by spiritual intelligence? So I tell them that, look, all I'm saying is that it's not cognitive intelligence, it's not about emotional intelligence, it's not about religion, totally not religion. Religion fragments, spiritual intelligence, spirituality integrates. So my understanding of spiritual intelligence happened when I really started reading the Upanishads. They are probably the most powerful scriptures written in any culture, any religion, anywhere, because they don't speak a word about God. It's all about an ultimate truth, the Brahman, and who you are, and so on and so forth. But what it is we are now teaching children in school level, the underprivileged kids, and they are able to understand it very well. That spiritual intelligence is about respecting the other person. As a result, you respect yourself, you love other people. So it's very simple to be approached that way. But the word has been unfortunately corrupted by religion. That religion is spirituality. Religion is not spirituality. Religion is the opposite of spirituality.
Right. Courage is many times more mental than physical. Displaying your emotions, expressing your vulnerability in situations is something, unfortunately, we, at least in India, men are not allowed to do that, right? That whole concept of mard ko dard nahi hota and all. Any instances that you recollect where you could not hold back your emotions, maybe you cried in public, or any such instance that you recollect where you just let loose? And this question is relevant because of the fact that you mentioned that you were influenced by women in your life. And I believe that if you are being influenced by women, then it makes it a lot more easier for you to display your emotions and not hold them back when the situation
Yeah.
requires.
I don't think it's an Indian phenomenon. The guy who wrote Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus is an American. So it's all over the world. In my experience, it's all over the world. I think the primary fact is we are not allowed to explore our sensations and emotions. I would even go beyond the emotions.
Yeah.
Neuroscience tells us the first responders to any experience is sensory. And so are we ready to go through the sensory experience? No, we avoid doing that. We avoid talking about emotions. We just cognitively try and express something. That is what we are taught. And
Yeah.
that is because of our education, and whether it's Western or Indian. But the answer to your question is I tear when I watch movies. I tear when I listen to M.S. Subbulakshmi. I tear when I listen to some stories of whatever it is. So that is not the problem. The problem is how do you celebrate? At the end of the day, if you have 24 chromosomes in your DNA structure, only one differentiates you as a man and a woman. And that one seems to make all the difference to everybody. And that's stupid. We are all pretty much 50% or 49.5% and 51.5% whether men or women. So can we celebrate our femininity? And so to me, that was a challenge, which essentially meant that I had to be vulnerable, that I had to sort of let my guard down, seek forgiveness, all those kind of things. So that element of we are all Shiva and Shakti. So how can you let that Shakti come out in preference to Shiva in a kind of philosophical sense? That was my challenge, which was what I was able to. It's asymptotic, but moving towards that. But I agree with you that courage has nothing to do with physicality of courage. It's about the mental attitude, the grit, the resilience, and all that you have.
Right.
Plus many other things which we don't recognize as courage: gratitude, acceptance, surrender. These are extraordinarily powerful examples of courage. Unless you have the courage to be able to surrender and forgive and accept in gratitude, you won't do it. So if you are a coward, you cannot surrender. You cannot seek forgiveness. You cannot accept. But if you're courageous, yes, you can. So it all different shades of, like the 50 Shades of Grey, kind of says the 50 Shades of Courage, perhaps. Yeah.
The other essence, and I'm asking this simply because as a coach, you have coached a lot of senior people, a lot of leaders. As a practicing coach now, I also realize that to don the role of a coach, you need to shed a lot of armor, which you had probably endorsed yourself with when you grew up in corporate life, and to admit that, okay, I'm starting from, day zero, from ground zero, and to say that, okay, I'm now like literally like a one-man army rather than having an army of my own, which I would have had in a corporate life. What do you think that phase is like, and what are the ways in which you can actually build yourself mentally, prepare yourself much better, and probably that could be a key element in terms of being successful at coaching.
Unfortunately, the problem is that when you go through the system of coaching competencies, however good they are, ICF is very good. I have no complaints about it. But just learning them and applying them, you're only cognitively learning and applying them. Unfortunately, these institutions do not tell you that the starting point of any coaching should be coaching yourself and then get rid of all your baggage. That is the biggest problem. So I would say a large majority of even people whom I have coached or trained, even now today, though Coacharya is constantly focusing on self-coaching, spiritual coaching and stuff like that, people are still, they find it easier to coach cognitively, coach transactionally. And also many people start coaching for the wrong reasons. Okay, now I'm fed up with my career. I want to do something. I want to earn money. And I think coaching is going to lead you to something which is much more successful than your career, which is totally untrue. It won't. It takes a long time before you become reasonably successful as a coach. For me, the shift happened when I went for my MCC. I did multiple attempts where I was still struggling. In those days, MCC was far, far tougher than what it is today. And that was the time when I met Cindy as my mentor coach. And with her help, in a sense, I learned to be authentic. I learned to be my real self. She said, look, when you are just talking to me and somebody else and not on a coach's thing, you're a different person. But when you are sitting across and trying to coach somebody, you become a different person. Then you are trying to sort of prove yourself that you're a coach. So when you stop trying to prove yourself that you're a coach, you become a real coach. That is when that happens. But what does that mean? But before that, fortunately, because I had a, let's say, fairly long experience of what I might call spiritual intelligence in terms of meditating, reflecting, journaling, and stuff like that, and cleansing myself, I found it easier. I'm a healer myself, trained healer. And if we are able to do that, you self-coach yourself, you remove all the negatives that you have within you, all your blind spots. At least you become aware of your blind spots, if not completely get rid of them. Then you reach a different space when you are genuinely being able to help another person and being non-judgmental about it. But if you carry the same baggages that you are trying to cure somebody of, then it's fake, it's hypocritical. So a large number of coaches that I see are practicing that hypocrisy. So they have to get out of it. They have to have the courage to be able to accept that this is what we are doing. We need to change. Then the coaching that you do can literally transform the world because it has transformed you. And in a sense, then you can work with other people. And then as we believe in Coacharya, the systemic coaching, not just if I coach you, it's not about what you want. The question that we always ask, what does the universe want out of you? What is it that you can help other people with? So take it into a much larger space of far beyond you, not just the self, not just the people immediately out of this thing, far beyond you. Then coaching becomes genuinely a vocation. It's not a profession, and it becomes my personal experience. It's a healing process. It's noble. We can reach there, certainly, if we really commit ourselves to. It requires that spiritual intelligence in coaching.
Very interesting. The other aspect which gets talked about a lot is how do you maintain your mental fortitude when you're talking to your client or coachee. The challenges and the problem that they're going through kind of resonate with your own challenges in the past, and maybe being mentally strong is going to be an advantage, not displaying your emotions. Does that flip around? Does that become an advantage that you're not emotionally expressive, and does that become an advantage when you're a coach?
It follows from what I said earlier, right? I mean, if you have faced your challenges, if you've been aware of what your blind spots are, what your weaknesses have been, and how I accept them. It's not that I'm over them. I accept them. I know that I have these and I have these challenges and I'm still struggling with them, for example, all that kind of a stuff. Then you become a different person. It's much easier to work with another person because then you become non-judgmental. Otherwise, I start believing I'm holier than thou. A very simple example again is Carl Rogers, if you read his book on becoming a person and also watch his videos of coaching Gloria, three of them, Albert Ellis, Fritz Perls and him coaching. There's a huge difference. And somebody later asked him, what was your challenge in coaching Gloria? And it's a real case. This lady who, way back in the 50s or whatever, was a divorcee, and she had a 10-year-old daughter, and she started dating somebody. And that was what she was taking coaching on. And Roger said, this is very, very strict Presbyterian or whatever, maybe, and Christian. And divorce was not an option. And for me, that part of the religious self rebelled against what I was hearing. But then I had to sort of make myself fully be centered in that unconditional positive regard that Carl Rogers talks about, the client centricity, the authenticity, empathy, and so on. And I told her, I said, this is what is coming up for me, and I'm struggling with it. And please understand that. But it's no reflection on you, it's a reflection on me. There's a part of a chapter on becoming a person, and later in some other interviews. That is courage, that's his vulnerability, and that is unconditional positive regard. That is coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So if each of us is able to do that kind of a stuff,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm faced with a situation where somebody is having an affair, whatever it is, and that's not what I believe in or something, and rather than being a hypocrite about it, can I sort of empathize with that person and be disengaged and be able to try and help the person in whatever best way that we can, instead of trying to preach to them like a padri would or priest would or whatever. I think that is coaching. There, as you said, if you are able to do that, then you can accept your own challenges, which in the past have bothered you. You have overcome them, and you're able to help another person.
Very interesting. What I've observed, the whatever I've limited view I have of the coaching ecosystem, right? Invariably, people take up coaching in the later stage in their life, right? In the 40s and 50s. Do you think embracing coaching or the concepts of coaching or the essence of coaching in, let's say, in your 20s can actually help you become a much better and much stronger individual? Of course, the reason why they don't do that is because coaching is not obviously the most lucrative option from a career perspective initially, and that might probably deter a lot of youngsters from doing that. But do you think embracing essence of coaching early stages, especially self-coaching, if not use it from a commercial angle perspective, do you think that could be a game changer as far as coaching goes?
Look, I mean, if you start looking at coaching as a way of life, and which is what we are trying to teach these kids at the age of 14 and 15, and we are finding it possible. All that you're doing, it's not rocket science. It's just about a process where you have an end in view and you help them to understand why they have that dream. For instance, in Coaching for Performance, Sir John Whitmore talks about the dream goal and then end goal and then process and performance goals and so on. So that is something that we work with these kids. Okay, what's your dream? Kids who are living in the slums, they come and tell us that, yeah, I want to be an Abdul Kalam, I want to be a Bill Gates, I want to be whatever, an IPS officer, an IAS officer. They have these fantastic dreams, and then we sort of tell them, no, you can't have these dreams. You've got to be practical. You come from this is what you, which is nonsense. Can I encourage their dreams? Can we encourage their dreams? And then why do they have these dreams? What is it that they want to achieve with it? Why is it meaningful to them? And what is it that they can stepwise address? And what are the challenges they're likely to face? And then explore the limiting beliefs with which, unfortunately, these kids who are from slum areas and so on, and we explore those limiting beliefs. You can help them to reframe, create that awareness about themselves, and then move into action. That is coaching. And that they can learn at the school level. We are doing that at high school level now. And I think certainly middle school and high school, we are in a position to be able to do that. Right. If we start doing it, then it becomes a way of life because they are self-coaching themselves. Then they get into community, start working with people. So it doesn't necessarily have to become a profession where you coach and earn money, but the coaching becomes a way of life which helps you in any profession that you take. Like if you go into any corporate kind of a career, feedback giving and performance improvement, people engagement, etc. If you are a good coach, you'll automatically excel in those. If you're not, you're going to suck at those. So coaching it should be taught as we teach STEM subjects today. In fact, it's going to be far more important STEM subjects because you don't need to know math anymore. You have calculators and computers, and you don't need to know anything about software and any of that rubbish because AI will help you. All these are going to become obsolete.
Yeah.
So all information at its fingertips. So all that you really require is how to be yourself, how to be aware of yourself. How do you behave with another person with respect? How do you treat yourself with respect?
Yeah.
And that'll help to overcome the crisis of faith that we see today, which
Right.
is about your own family you don't have belief in, your religion you have totally no belief in, your politicians you treat them with contempt and you have to use them. So every institution that you come across, you have a crisis of faith. And that affects you. Then you have to start a crisis of faith in yourself. So coaching helps you to build that faith in yourself and move forward.
Interesting. The other element was meditation, and I know we exchanged a few messages around meditation in silence and why silence has its own advantages. And sometimes I feel that self-coaching and meditation, go hand in hand, right? I mean, if you are good at meditation, you would probably be able to, onboard yourself on the journey of self-coaching, because what you do, and at least what I do in meditation, and as a runner, I can honestly admit a great run for me earlier used to be that, I used to say running was my meditation. But ever since I've endorsed meditation as a practice, I don't say that anymore, number one. Second is my quality of meditation in the morning decides the quality of the run I have later in the day. So it kind of prepares me mentally for the day coming forward. How would you put meditation and self-coaching next to each other? Right? Do you think they are similar, synergistic, achieving the same purpose, or you would say no, both are important?
Look, I mean, let me start with this. Running can be a meditation. Next time you start running, just focus in your throat area and you can run a marathon. I have trained people in running marathons to face the wall. The throat, when you keep focusing on it, the energy of the universe, as it were, around you gets absorbed. For me, walking is a meditation. So anything can be a meditation. Meditation is not just sitting cross-legged and plugging your ears and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
And meditation doesn't make you deaf and dumb.
Yeah.
I can sit in meditation in the middle of a busiest traffic circle anywhere and meditate. It's about going in yourself and you're disengaging yourself.
Yeah.
And which is what in yoga is called the pratyahara. That means the senses, the ahara, the food of the senses which is coming into you. You're disengaging from them and then you move into dharana, which is focusing on one particular sense at a time, and to dhyana, focusing on one thought at a time, and finally the samadhi, which is disengaging. And that is what meditation is about. So in meditation, in coaching, they go hand in hand because all coaching uses reflection, self-reflection. This is called Shravana, Manana, Nidhyasana. Shravana is about the sensing, the Manana is about the reflection, Nidhyasana. After you critically reflect, critical thinking, and then you go and apply and see how it helps and you keep refining. So these go hand in hand, which is why we teach meditation, not as a kind of a religious exercise or whatever it is. It's just watch your breath, watch your senses, and you are able to touch base with your own sensory perceptions and you can heal yourself. So meditation helps in self-coaching and in self-healing. So these can all be brought together. So, but if you start looking at meditation as, one practice, I will do it for 20 minutes in a day and the rest of the day I'll do any nonsense that I want. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
That effect of the meditation should continue through the day. Are you in a position to disengage? Okay, from time to time you will get upset, you will get triggered.
Yeah.
But can it get you back into an even keel very quickly? What used to bother me for weeks in earlier days now probably bothers me for 15 minutes now. So those are the kind of shifts that can happen to you. You become much more disengaged, much more balanced.
Yeah, what I believe is meditative state of mind, or what meditation does to me when I'm doing 10 other things in the day, is more important than what I do for those 10 minutes of meditation, right? What I'm carrying forward, right? What is the essence which I'm carrying forward? I mean, I might not have had a great meditation span on that day, but does it influence me when I'm driving, when I'm talking to someone, when I'm running or playing? I think that's more important. And a lot of times people say, oh, I didn't have a good meditation today, and they kind of drag that sense of disappointment to the rest of the day. That, oh, if I couldn't just sit for quiet for 10 minutes, where is the question of running a marathon? And I think that works counterproductive, where you realize that you were doing that meditation not for those 10 minutes, but for the balance 23 hours and 50 minutes that you had in the day.
Look, there's no such thing as a good meditation or a bad meditation.
Okay.
And if we are honest to yourself, I don't know when you remember when you started meditation. When I started meditation, the worst kind of emotions came up with me. It was about lust, it's about greed, it's about shame, it's about regret, all that. And that all has to be removed before you can start on to even keel. So if anybody says meditation brings me peace, all the time, every time, they are lying. They are just lying. All meditation is a reflection of how you relate to the environment. One particular day, you might have had a previous day, may have had a bad experience. As you meditate, that comes out.
Mm.
All that you do is that is why the 10 or 20 minutes of meditation is important,
Yeah.
because then it allows you to set yourself on an even keel. And the
Mm.
same way as an exercise improves your metabolic kind of stuff in the body, the
Yeah.
meditation improves your mental metabolism, if you want to call it. So sets you on an even keel. There are some great gurus out there who talk about sunya meditation,
Hmm.
and their followers come to me, and sometimes and tell me, my guru taught me sunya meditation. I said, what do you remember about it? Oh, everything about it. It's so calmful, so calm, so peaceful. I said, if a sunya meditation, that means no thought is what you're saying, then how would you remember what you did? Just like you asked earlier, oh, you are asking me a trick question. I said, no, I'm not asking you a trick question. Go and ask your guru,
Yeah.
whoever taught you, what is the meaning of the sunya? Buddha defined sunya, the void, not as a negative, empty space. That is what is today the dark energy and dark matter. We know that 97% of the universe, as it's expanding, is that dark energy and dark matter. It's just invisible to you, and you are not even seeing it, and so you are disengaged from it. Can you move into that space?
Yeah.
As long as you live, every inhalation follows your exhalation. There's a thought. The thought is of the greed for you to live. So
Hmm.
there is no way that you can exist without thoughts in your head or
Right.
any other part of your cellular system. But what happens is you can get disengaged from that thought. That's what is samadhi about. Samadhi, that you are coming from your original source.
Right.
And that source is for you to be blissful, which again is not about happiness or pleasure. Bliss is the absence of either pain or pleasure. It's an equanimous state.
Yeah.
There's no sinusoidal wave. It's just a flat line,
Hmm.
almost close to your death, as it were.
Yeah.
So these are not difficult concepts, but people need to sort of think about them.
Yeah. So, 2 points which I would like to add on the topic of meditation. The first is I actually broke up meditation into a analytical task, which I said, okay, I need to master that. And I used to believe that quality of meditation is defined by the number of thoughts which come to me, and how can I reduce the overall number of thoughts which come in a span of 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And I actually used to keep a count. I'm not joking. Oh, I had 6 distractions this time. Next time I have to get down to 5 distractions, then four, then two, then one. Then of course that phase evolved, and of course I matured as well. The other point I wanted to share is, it's, and as you mentioned, right, I mean, it's foolish to think that your meditation can ensure your 24 hours go calm, right? It's as foolish as assuming that you will only have good things in your life, in your entire life, right? It's not going to be possible. And I believe that meditation is like going to a movie theater, in the theater, right? It's not that you just park your vehicle, get into the theater, movie starts, and you get out. There is clutter, there is chaos, there is crowd, there's pushing around, someone is guiding you to your seat, you're realizing that the seat is not appropriate or whatever it is, then you're sitting down, and then those stupid ads which come in the beginning. You have to go through those ads before you get to the start of the movie, and that's not over. You have an interval in between. Your family wants you to get popcorns. You go out and come back and sit down and then finish the movie. If you had assumed that you just come in, watch the movie, and get out, you're probably living a fake life, right? It's just doesn't happen. And I think that's the whole perception buildup of meditation, I think, is wrong. And it's probably got to do with our education route. I mean, if I had got meditation as a practice in my school, I would probably be at some other place, I would say, right? I mean, so many of my problems would have never been defined as a problem in the first place. I didn't have that mental fortitude to be able to understand or appreciate what's the essence of that problem coming to me, which now with meditation I can.
Yeah. What I would sort of suggest to you is expand that viewpoint to your life as well. That Shankara says the whole life is a dream. That's a Maya, right?
Yeah.
It's only a movie.
Yeah.
So the moment you start looking at it,
Yeah.
that I'm going through a movie all through my life, and that's the Maya, whatever it may be, and I'm disengaging myself from it. I'm not going to be distracted, as you said. Then your whole lifetime experience is a meditation, right?
Yeah.
So why just think about one particular movie? Your
Yeah.
whole life is a movie.
Yeah, they say, right? You're the hero of your own movie. Make sure it's a good one.
No, I mean, that again, what do you define as a good one?
Yeah,
Your
that's
good one is what does good to you. What about other people?
yeah,
If you are an Ambani or Adani, doing good to you is only about your self-aggrandizement and ruining other people, then in that case, is that going to be, in any sense of the term,
very
good?
true, very true. Yeah.
Okay. So all these things, labels that we put as good and bad and whatever it is, can you gradually get out of it?
Hmm.
One of the best advices I was given was someone, guru of hers, told my mother, is that she used to say, I mean, you can never ask the universe to help you not to have problems. Life is problems. The fact that you arrived here is to work out your past karmas, which is a problem. All
Right.
that you can ask the universe to be in support of you.
Yeah.
Help me. That's all that you can do.
Right.
So the good or the bad is your judgment,
Right.
your cognitive judgment.
You handle multiple transitions in your career, and I say every transition is more of a discomfort to start with. Later on, of course, we can say it's a very comfortable situation. Embracing discomfort, do you think it's a good slogan to have, or it's something which not necessarily required?
No, you have a point. I mean, in learning theory, any learning, any expansion is discomfort. So you go from distress to eustress, as it were. It's about the way that you perceive that.
Hmm.
So in life, any transition, if you're going to learn from the transition, it is going to disturb you. It is going to provide you discomfort.
Right.
But how do you handle that and learn from the discomfort and make yourself in a comfort zone and then expand and keep expanding?
Yeah.
Any expansion is going to be discomforting. So yeah, sure. But is it possible to move into that? Like, for example, the first time I had to learn that, look, I had to apologize for something that I said, genuinely forgive, seek forgiveness.
Yeah.
It was extremely, extremely discomforting.
Hmm.
It was discomforting to my ego.
Yeah.
But once I was able to do it, it was the most blissful experience that I've ever had. So you learn.
Very interesting. Good that you mentioned learning, because for me, the biggest source of learning are books. And being an avid reader, I can ask you, does it require courage to read books?
Courage to read books.
Yeah. I kind of feel it, right? I mean, I've lost the count of number of who have ignored reading as a important aspect of their lives, and they actually laugh about it. Oh, I don't read, man. I don't have time to read. Do you think it's is that element of courage, and you mentioned, right, acceptability, or let me use the right word, receptivity, right? If you're not willing to allow certain trunkets of wisdom to come through and flow through to you through books or through pages, it's probably going to require a lot of courage, because it's like shedding that fake sense of uh,
I mean, look, reading is just one form of learning. Okay. So there are different people with different aptitudes. They learn from different things.
yeah.
I know I myself am an avid learner, reader, but that doesn't mean a thing. Supposing you are, let's say, dyslexic, you might want to view rather than read. You might want to hear rather than read. So can you blame such people? So that I don't think that's a measure. That cannot be a measure. Secondly, you also have to understand what is it that you're imbibing by reading. I always say to people who have been in my coaching classes, knowledge is garbage. Believe you me. Any reading is absolute garbage unless you reflect on it seriously, or maybe journal or do whatever you have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And then with that reflection, critical thinking, then say, hey, how can I use that? Even if it's fiction,
Yeah.
what is that experience? Or even if it's a movie,
Yeah.
how can I use that information that I have now absorbed, the sensory information, the shravana, into manana, which is reflection, and then use it to better myself through nididhyasana, which is the
Yeah.
practice. So I don't think anything great sacred about reading. If you're going to read the Vedas, it is, I don't know, there's a very famous verse of Shankara, book called the Bhajagovindam. The opening verse says, Nahi nahi rakshati tukurun karane. He sees an old man sitting on the banks of the river Ganges and mugging up the Panini's grammar. He says, you bloody idiot, you are about to die. And what is this going to help you with? So that is reading. So how is it going to help you? I would much rather listen to a devotional song of M.S. Subbulakshmi or any spiritual song, then read if that is what it is. So it all depends. It all depends on what you want out of it. But
Yeah.
are you reflecting on it and you are acting on it?
Right.
Then that knowledge becomes wisdom. It becomes your wisdom.
True.
When I convey my wisdom to you, it is still knowledge to you. It is garbage.
Yeah.
Unless you reflect and practice it, then it becomes your wisdom. And
Yeah.
that is how you become spiritually intelligent,
Very true.
not just by reading.
Yeah. No, it's a very good point that, in fact, I am going to release a blog this evening as well. But if I watch the weather forecast and I know it's going to rain tomorrow, and if I take out my umbrella and go out and save myself, I've converted knowledge, which was weather forecast, into wisdom. And if I'm still not doing that, it's ignorance, and that reflects my foolishness, right?
But
And
wisdom is if you carry your umbrella, the next day it doesn't rain and you don't get upset about it. Okay, I carried it just in case.
that's a good one. Yeah,
That is true wisdom.
kick
Not
yourself for it.
not carrying the stupid umbrella.
Yeah. And then they say, right, if you carry the umbrella every day, then it becomes useless as a wisdom, right? It's a wisdom which you're not using of. It's been overused, right? It's beyond the expiry date of the wisdom.
Sure.
Right.
It depends on what you want to use the umbrella as. You use it as a walking stick or whatever it is. It becomes a habit. So, all these things you can have explanation. But yeah,
Yeah.
essentially, yes. The simple rule of thumb to me is, can you reflect at the end of each day, go through what you've experienced sensorily inside your body? What is it that you're sensing, not just emotion? And then heal yourself and then say, I want to be my better self, and this is what I'm going to do. And practice it and grow. And you will find in 15 days you have reached a stage which is far superior to where you started. It's as simple as that.
And glad you corrected me. It's just not reading, right? It's any source of information, TV, movies, someone telling something, a conference. In fact, I believe that movies are a great source of knowledge and wisdom for me. I mean, I still appreciate the movie Catch Me If You Can, right? It's about a criminal, right? The guy was actually a criminal and committed multiple crimes. I loved his finesse. I loved his elasticity to be able to move from one situation to the other, to be able to get that hint that, okay, what's going to come next? Where can I get caught? How can I learn from that? I mean, you can twist it around into a positive thing, even if it's a criminal whose movie you are actually watching as well.
Sure, movie. Or, I mean, if you're inclined that way, a song by Kabir, if you understand what he's trying to say, that'll lift you to heights that you never imagined that you could.
Yeah.
So anything that you sense, nature has intended, the universe has intended it as a learning to you. Are you able to convert it into learning is really the question. Are you able to reflect on it?
Yeah.
If you just sit and hear the sounds of the chirping of a bird or two, three cats out here moving around and doing whatever it is, just watch them and you learn from it. There's no such definition. I only learn when I read Albert Einstein or somebody else, Isaac Asimov or the Vedas or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You learn from everything that you sense, hear, see, feel, touch, smell, etc.
No, great point for reflection. And it's been an extremely engaging session, sir. And thanks a lot for your time. I think this was long due, but totally worth the wait. And look forward to many more memorable moments going. Thank you, sir.